The silence in Mrs. Thornfield's office stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Maya watched her English teacher's perfectly manicured fingers hover over the federal badge, not quite daring to touch it. The woman who had moments ago wielded words like weapons now seemed incapable of forming a single syllable. "Agent Rebecca Chen," her mother said, her voice carrying an authority Maya had heard only in fragments through closed doors during late-night phone calls. "I believe you wanted to discuss my daughter's education." Mrs. Thornfield's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The condescending smile that had been her signature expression throughout Maya's 3 years at Westfield had vanished entirely. Agent Chen, I had no idea." "That's the point." Rebecca's dark eyes never left the teacher's face as she settled into the chair beside Maya with fluid precision. Even in the leather jacket that had moments ago been used as evidence of her unsuitability as a parent, she commanded the room. "Maya, would you mind explaining what prompted you to call me during a federal operation?" Maya's stomach clenched. She'd blown her mother's cover, whatever it was, because of wounded pride and teenage anger. The weight of that realization pressed down on her chest like a stone. "Mrs. Thornfield said that people like you don't understand the value of education. She implied that your lifestyle was the reason I couldn't properly analyze the social hierarchies in Pride and Prejudice." A muscle twitched in Rebecca's jaw. "People like me." "Well, I mean..." Mrs. Thornfield's voice cracked as she gestured weakly at the leather jacket. "The motorcycle culture isn't exactly known for academic excellence. I was simply suggesting that Maya might benefit from more traditional role models." Maya had seen her mother angry before, the controlled fury that simmered beneath the surface during their rare arguments about curfews and college applications, but this was something else entirely. This was the cold, calculating rage of someone accustomed to life-and-death situations. "Tell me, Mrs. Thornfield," Rebecca said, her voice deceptively calm, "what exactly do you know about traditional role models? Because from where I'm sitting, a woman who makes racist assumptions about a student's family based on clothing choices seems like a poor example herself." The teacher flinched as if she'd been slapped. "That's not what I would never..." "You would never what? Make racist comments? Because I have a 16-year-old witness who says otherwise." Rebecca leaned forward slightly, and Maya noticed how her mother's hand rested casually near her jacket pocket. "Maya graduated middle school with a 4 gigapascals. She's maintained straight A's in every subject except yours. Her SAT prep scores put her in the 99th percentile. So I'm curious, exactly what traditional values is she missing?" Maya stared at her mother in amazement. She'd never heard her own achievements listed with such fierce pride. For years, Rebecca had been absent more than present, missing award ceremonies, arriving late to birthday dinners, taking mysterious phone calls at all hours. Maya had assumed her mother simply didn't prioritize her academic success. Mrs. Thornfield scrambled for solid ground. "Perhaps I misspoke. Maya is certainly a capable student. It's just that her essay responses sometimes lack cultural sophistication, an understanding of the social subtleties that come from proper breeding." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. There it was. The assumption that had followed her through 3 years at Westfield Academy, whispered in dormitory hallways and country club dining rooms. No matter how perfect her grades, how flawless her extracurricular record, she would never quite belong among the old money families that dominated the school's social hierarchy. "Proper breeding." Rebecca repeated the phrase as if she were examining a particularly distasteful piece of evidence. "You mean like the proper breeding that leads to corruption scandals among Connecticut's elite families? The kind that results in federal investigations into money laundering and human trafficking?" Mrs. Thornfield went completely white. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." Rebecca stood with predatory grace, retrieving her badge from the desk. "Maya will be transferring out of your class effective immediately. I'm sure the administration can arrange something more suitable." As they walked toward the door, Maya's mind raced with questions she couldn't ask. Human trafficking? Federal investigations? Who was her mother really, and what had Maya stumbled into by making that phone call? "Agent Chen," Mrs. Thornfield called out desperately. "Surely we can resolve this misunderstanding. There's no need to involve the administration, or anyone else for that matter." Rebecca paused at the threshold, her hand on the door handle. When she turned back, her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Mrs. Thornfield, you have no idea what I'm capable of involving, but I suggest you remember this conversation the next time you're tempted to make assumptions about people you don't understand." The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like a verdict being rendered. Maya's legs felt unsteady as they walked down the marble hallway of Westfield Academy's administrative wing. The familiar portraits of distinguished alumni, senators, Supreme Court justices, Fortune 500 CEOs, seemed to watch their retreat with disapproving eyes. She'd passed these same oil paintings every day for 3 years, aspiring to join their ranks someday. Now she wondered if any of them were connected to the investigations her mother had mentioned. "Mom?" Maya started, but Rebecca's sharp look silenced her. 2 seniors rounded the corner ahead, their blazers perfectly pressed, ties knotted with the casual perfection that came from generations of private school education. "Maya, how'd your meeting go?" Sophia Blackwell's voice carried the practiced warmth that made her president of the Honor Society. Her father owned half of Greenwich's waterfront properties. "My mom said Mrs. Thornfield requested individual conferences for all her AP students." Maya's throat went dry. She glanced at her mother, who had somehow transformed back into the woman who picked her up in leather and denim, except now Maya knew it was all performance. The casual slouch, the way she hung back like she didn't belong in these hallways, even her slightly too loud boot heels against marble, it was all deliberate. "Fine," Maya managed. "Just discussing my Pride and Prejudice essay." "Oh, good. I was worried when I saw you looked upset earlier." Sophia's gaze drifted to Rebecca with polite curiosity. Among Westfield's elite, even disapproval was wrapped in silk. "I don't think we've met." "I'm Sophia." Rebecca stepped forward with a smile that looked genuine, but somehow made Maya's skin crawl. "Rebecca, Maya's mom." The pause was microscopic, but Maya caught it. That fraction of hesitation, as Sophia processed the leather jacket, the motorcycle boots, the complete absence of pearls or designer handbags that marked proper Westfield mothers. Maya had witnessed this calculation hundreds of times, but now she wondered what else her classmates were cataloguing. "How lovely to meet you," Sophia said, her boarding school manners flawless. "Are you involved in any of the parent committees?" "My mother chairs the scholarship fund. I keep busy with work," Rebecca replied easily. "Federal investigations don't leave much time for committee meetings." Another pause. Sophia's smile flickered like a candle in wind. "How interesting. What kind of investigations?" Maya held her breath. Her mother's cover, whatever it was, seemed fragile as spun glass. One wrong word and everything could shatter. The kind that make Connecticut a safer place for teenagers like you and Maya. Rebecca's hand settled protectively on Maya's shoulder. "Speaking of which, we should head home, school night and all." As they walked away, Maya heard Sophia whisper something to her companion, probably speculation about Maya's mysterious mother that would spread through the dormitories by dinner. She'd spent 3 years carefully curating her reputation at Westfield, building relationships with the influential families who could write recommendation letters to Ivy League admissions committees. One afternoon had potentially unraveled everything. "Your friends seem nice," Rebecca observed, as they reached the parking lot, where her Harley waited like a black predator among the Mercedes and BMWs. "They're not really friends," Maya admitted, accepting the helmet her mother offered. "More like strategic alliances." Rebecca's expression darkened. That's a hell of a way for a 16-year-old to talk about relationships. Maya climbed onto the bike behind her mother, wrapping her arms around the leather jacket that had caused such offense. "It's how things work here. Everything's about connections, family reputation, who your parents know. I've been pretending to fit in for 3 years because Westfield graduates get into Harvard and Princeton. Because I thought that's what you wanted for me. The engine roared to life, drowning out conversation until they reached the tree-lined street where their modest colonials sat among grander estates. Maya had always felt defensive about their house, respectable but not impressive, with a mortgage instead of a trust fund. Now she wondered if the humble facade was as deliberate as everything else about her mother's identity. "Maya," Rebecca said as they walked up the front steps, "what happened today changes things. I need you to understand that some of what you learned about me has to stay private. There are people, dangerous people, who can't know what I really do." Maya paused at their front door, key in hand. "What about what I need? I'm supposed to graduate from Westfield in 2 years. I have academic competitions, college interviews, recommendation letters to consider. Mrs. Thornfield might be a racist, but she's also department head. She writes letters for Harvard admissions. Harvard will still be there after this is over." "Will I?" Maya's voice cracked. "Everything I've worked for, every relationship I've built at that school, it's all at risk now because of one phone call." Rebecca's expression softened, and for a moment Maya glimpsed something vulnerable beneath the federal agent's armor. "Sweetheart, I know this is hard, but some things matter more than college admissions." Maya turned the key, stepping into the house that had always felt like home, but now seemed like another carefully constructed lie. She had spent 3 years sacrificing authenticity for acceptance, and in one afternoon, her mother had blown it all apart for reasons Maya didn't understand.
The living room felt smaller than usual, as if the walls had shifted inward while they were gone. Maya dropped her backpack by the door and watched her mother move through their familiar space with new eyes. Every detail seemed suspect now. The way Rebecca automatically checked the front window before settling onto the couch, how her phone lay face down but within constant reach, the careful way she positioned herself with a clear view of both entrances. "How long have you been lying to me?" The question escaped before Maya could stop it. Rebecca's hands stilled on her jacket zipper. "I've never lied to you." "Really? Because 3 hours ago I thought my mom worked in consulting and rode a motorcycle for fun. Now I find out you're some kind of federal agent investigating human trafficking." Maya's voice rose with each word. "What else don't I know? Are you even really my mother?" The sharp crack of Rebecca's laugh held no humor. "Trust me, sweetheart. I remember every sleepless night of your infancy. No one volunteers for that level of exhaustion." "Then explain." Maya collapsed into the armchair across from her, the same spot where she'd done homework every night for years while her mother worked late, took mysterious calls, disappeared for days at a time with vague explanations about business trips. "Explain why my entire life feels like a performance I wasn't even aware I was giving." Rebecca was quiet for so long that Maya wondered if she'd refuse to answer. Outside, the familiar sounds of their neighborhood continued. Mrs. Patterson's dog barking, the distant hum of evening traffic, the normalcy that now felt like a facade. "3 years ago," Rebecca finally said, "I was prosecuting a case involving missing girls from Hartford. Runaways, mostly. Kids the system had already failed." Her voice took on the flat tone Maya recognized from late-night phone calls. "We kept hitting dead ends. Local police were incompetent or worse. The girls just vanished." Maya pulled her knees to her chest, a familiar defensive posture from childhood thunderstorms and bad dreams. "What does that have to do with the Hells Angels?" "Everything and nothing." Rebecca's smile was grim. "The trafficking network we uncovered had connections everywhere: police departments, judiciary, social services. People who should have been protecting these girls were selling them instead. But the real power, the money behind it all, that was coming from somewhere else, somewhere respectable." The word hit Maya like ice water. She thought of Sophia's casual mention of her mother's scholarship fund, the charity galas where Westfield families donated millions to worthy causes, while photographers captured their generosity. "You mean, I mean that sometimes the monsters wear $1,000 suits and have their names on museum wings." Rebecca leaned forward, her eyes intense. "The biker connection was supposed to be a dead end, a way for us to eliminate one possibility and move on. Instead, we discovered that the angels were being used, framed for crimes they didn't commit while the real perpetrators stayed safely above suspicion. Maya's mind raced, trying to reconcile this revelation with everything she thought she knew about her world. "So, you went undercover?" I volunteered. "Federal prosecutors aren't supposed to do field work, but I had the background for it. Motorcycle license, leather jacket collection from my rebellious law school days." Rebecca's attempt at lightness fell flat. The plan was 6 months maximum. Gather evidence, expose the real network, get those girls home. That was 3 years ago. The corruption goes deeper than we imagined. Every time we think we've found the top, there's another layer. More missing girls. More powerful people involved. Rebecca's hands clenched into fists. People who send their children to schools like Westfield Academy. The implication hit Maya like a physical blow. Her carefully cultivated classmates, their influential families, the very social hierarchy she'd been desperate to join. Was it all connected to something monstrous? Mrs. Thornfield? Her husband sits on the board of 3 different children's charities, has access to vulnerable kids through his nonprofit work. Rebecca's voice was arctic. We've been watching him for months. Maya felt the world tilt on its axis. Every assumption she'd built her life around was crumbling. The phone call that had seemed like teenage rebellion had actually thrust her into the middle of a federal investigation. Her mother's apparent absence, the missed school events, and distant behavior had all been in service of saving kidnapped girls. Maya. Rebecca's voice was gentle now, pulling her back from the edge of panic. I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to understand. What happened today, my cover being blown at your school, it changes everything. The people we're investigating can't know who I really am. What are you saying? Before Rebecca could answer, her phone buzzed against the coffee table. Then again, and again. Maya watched her mother's face go pale as she read the screen. We have a problem, Rebecca whispered, already reaching for her jacket. They know.
Maya watched her mother's fingers fly across the phone screen, typing responses with the speed and precision of someone whose life depended on communication. The easy intimacy of their conversation shattered like glass, replaced by the cold efficiency of whatever federal protocol was now in motion. Pack a bag, Rebecca said without looking up. Essential items only. We might need to leave tonight. The words hit Maya like a slap. Leave? I can't leave. I have a calculus test tomorrow and debate team practice and... Maya, her mother's voice cut through the protest. 16 girls are missing. The youngest is 13. If our investigation fails because my cover was blown today, those girls stay missing. Maya remained frozen in her chair, her mind rejecting the sudden transformation of her safe, predictable world into something from a crime thriller. But what about my life? What about everything I've worked for? Rebecca finally looked up, and Maya saw exhaustion etched in lines around her eyes that hadn't been there that morning. Your life is exactly why we have to be careful. These people don't leave loose ends. You're talking about my classmates' parents. Sophia's dad owns art galleries, not trafficking rings. Mrs. Patterson next door bakes cookies for the whole neighborhood. This isn't some movie where... Maya, stop. Rebecca's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it and cursed under her breath. James Thornfield's black Suburban was spotted 3 blocks from here 20 minutes ago. He has no legitimate reason to be in this neighborhood. The name sent ice through Maya's veins. Mrs. Thornfield's husband, the man who supposedly worked with children's charities. Maybe it's a coincidence. Even as she said it, Maya knew how desperate she sounded. The same part of her that had spent 3 years carefully constructing the perfect Westfield Academy persona was now desperately trying to maintain the illusion that her world made sense, that her biggest problem could still be an English teacher's racism rather than federal fugitives and missing girls. Rebecca stood and moved to the front window, peering through the blinds with practiced surveillance skills Maya was only now recognizing. There's no such thing as coincidence in this business. Maya hugged her knees tighter, a 16-year-old girl trying to disappear into furniture that had always felt safe. I don't want this. I didn't ask for any of this. Neither did those missing girls. The harsh truth landed between them like a physical barrier. Maya understood intellectually that her mother was right, that saving trafficked children was more important than preserving her carefully curated academic career, but understanding and accepting were different things entirely. What if I don't say anything? Maya's voice came out smaller than she intended. I could go to school tomorrow like normal, tell everyone you work in consulting like I always have. Mrs. Thornfield probably won't even mention what happened. Rebecca turned from the window, her expression unreadable. And when James Thornfield asks his wife about the federal agent who threatened her, when they start wondering why Maya Chen's mother knew about ongoing investigations, you could have been bluffing, making it up to scare her. With a badge? With specific knowledge about his charity work? Rebecca shook her head. Maya, these people didn't get powerful by being stupid. They'll investigate. They'll discover that Rebecca Chen, motorcycle-riding single mother, doesn't exist in any federal database. Maya felt tears threatening and hated herself for the weakness. So, my choices are run away and abandon everything I've worked for, or stay and put your investigation at risk. Those aren't the only options. Something in her mother's tone made Maya look up. Rebecca had moved away from the window and was standing in the center of their living room like she was preparing for battle. What do you mean? Rebecca's phone buzzed again. This time, when she read the message, her jaw tightened. My handler wants me extracted tonight. Full witness protection protocol. New identities, relocation, the works. Maya's stomach dropped. New identities? Maya Chen, honor student at Westfield Academy, would cease to exist, along with Rebecca Chen, concerned mother. Her voice was clinical, but Maya caught the tremor underneath. We'd disappear completely, start over somewhere safe. The magnitude of the choice crashed over Maya like a wave, not just leaving Westfield Academy, but leaving her entire identity behind. Every friendship, every academic achievement, every carefully planned step toward the future she'd envisioned. All of it erased. But, Rebecca continued, her phone still buzzing insistently, there's another option, one my handler won't approve of. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What? We could stay. You could help me maintain my cover while we finish this investigation. It would be dangerous. It would mean lying to everyone you know, every day, for however long this takes. Help you how? Rebecca's smile was sharp and completely unlike the woman who had driven Maya to school that morning. By being exactly what you've always been, the perfect Westfield Academy student, above suspicion, connected to all the right families, invited to all the right parties. The phone's buzzing grew more urgent, and Maya realized her mother was waiting for an answer that would determine both their futures. Maya stared at her mother's phone, its screen lighting up with each insistent buzz like a countdown timer. The sound seemed to echo in her chest, marking the seconds before everything she'd ever known would either disappear forever or transform into something unrecognizable. How long do I have to decide? Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. About 30 seconds before I have to answer this call. Rebecca's finger hovered over the screen. My handler is not a patient man, and he's got extraction teams standing by. 30 seconds to choose between erasing Maya Chen entirely or becoming someone she'd never imagined. A federal informant at 16, living a double life that made her previous careful social navigation look like child's play. Maya closed her eyes and saw Mrs. Thornfield's face, twisted with racist assumptions and casual cruelty. Then she thought of those missing girls, 13 years old, and trapped somewhere while she worried about calculus tests and college recommendations. If I help you, Maya said, opening her eyes, what exactly would that mean? Rebecca's expression sharpened with something Maya had never seen before, professional assessment. Her mother was evaluating her like a potential asset rather than a daughter who needed protection. It means becoming my eyes and ears inside Westfield's social circle, attending parties where parents drink too much and share information they shouldn't, befriending the children of suspects, reporting back on conversations that could break this case open. Rebecca's voice was clinical now, all traces of maternal warmth replaced by federal efficiency. "It means lying to everyone, including your friends, every single day until we either rescue those girls or what? Or we disappear in the middle of the night because someone figured out who we really are." The phone's buzzing reached fever pitch, and Maya realized they were out of time. Rebecca's finger moved toward the answer button, ready to summon the extraction team that would erase them both. "Wait," Maya stood abruptly, her decision crystallizing like ice in her chest. "I'll do it." Rebecca froze. "Maya, think about what you're saying. This isn't some teenage spy fantasy. These people are dangerous. They've killed to protect their operation. Then those girls need someone to find them." Maya's voice surprised her with its steadiness. She thought of every careful social calculation she'd made over the past 3 years, every strategic friendship and polished performance. Maybe all that practice at being someone she wasn't had prepared her for this after all. Besides, you said it yourself, I'm the perfect Westfield student. Above suspicion. Sweetheart, once we do this, there's no going back. Even if we survive it, you'll never be the same person who walked into school this morning. Maya almost laughed at the bitter irony. That girl was already gone the moment Mrs. Thornfield showed her true colors. At least this way, her destruction means something. Rebecca studied her for a long moment, and Maya saw the exact instant her mother stopped seeing a child who needed protection and started seeing a partner in whatever came next. The transformation was subtle but absolute, a shifting of weight, a straightening of shoulders, a look of professional appraisal that was somehow more terrifying than the idea of witness protection. "Answer the phone," Maya said. "Tell your handler we're staying." Rebecca's finger moved to the screen, but she paused. "Maya, I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. Starting tomorrow morning, everything you do at school will be part of an active federal investigation. Every conversation, every friendship, every party invitation. It all becomes evidence. And if James Thornfield or anyone else in this network suspects what we're really doing, they'll kill us. They'll try." Maya nodded, surprised by how calm she felt. Maybe this was what crossing a threshold really meant, not just leaving your old life behind, but discovering capabilities you never knew you possessed. She'd spent 3 years perfecting the art of strategic social interaction at Westfield. Now she'd use those skills to hunt the monsters hiding behind charitable donations and museum galas. "I understand," Maya said. "I'm ready." Rebecca answered the phone on what must have been its final ring. "Agent Chen." Her voice was all business now. "No extraction needed. My cover is intact and I have a new asset in place." She listened for a moment, her eyes never leaving Maya's face. "Yes, sir, I'm certain. We're staying operational." Maya heard shouting through the phone. Her mother's handler was clearly not pleased with this development. But Rebecca's expression remained steady, almost serene, as she listened to what was undoubtedly a lecture about protocol and safety procedures. "Understood, sir, but we're staying." Rebecca ended the call and looked at Maya. "Congratulations! You just became the youngest federal informant in Connecticut history." Maya Chen, honor student and careful social climber, was officially dead. What stood in her place was someone harder, someone willing to smile at suspected criminals while gathering evidence of their crimes. Someone who would attend charity galas and boarding school parties, not to climb social ladders, but to save missing girls. There was no going back now. The silence that followed Rebecca's phone call felt heavier than anything Maya had ever experienced. She sat in their living room, the same space where she'd done homework for 3 years, where she'd practiced debate speeches and worried about college applications, and tried to process that it had just become the headquarters of a federal investigation. "Your handler sounded angry," Maya said, her voice cutting through the quiet. Rebecca was already moving, pulling a laptop from a bag Maya had never seen before. "Agent Morrison doesn't approve of improvisation. He's old-school FBI, by the book, minimal risk, maximum control." She opened the computer, and Maya glimpsed screens full of surveillance photos and case files before Rebecca angled it away. He's also never worked deep cover in a trafficking network. Maya watched her mother transform before her eyes. The woman who had picked her up from school that afternoon was gone, replaced by someone who moved with predatory efficiency. Every gesture was economical, purposeful. Even her posture had changed, straighter, more alert, like a soldier preparing for battle. So what happens now? We establish protocols. Rebecca pulled out a second phone. Sleek, black, definitely not the one she'd been using all evening. This is a secure line. Encrypted, untraceable. You memorize the number but never save it in your regular phone. We communicate through this device only. Maya took the phone, surprised by its weight. It felt real in a way that made everything else seem suddenly fragile. What about school tomorrow? Do I just pretend nothing happened? You do exactly what Maya Chen would do. Attend classes, interact with friends, maintain your academic performance. Rebecca's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard. But now you're also watching, listening, learning who talks to whom, whose parents are unexpectedly wealthy, which families take sudden trips to unusual locations. The magnitude of what she'd agreed to was starting to sink in. Maya had spent 3 years carefully observing Westfield's social hierarchy, but always as an outsider trying to gain acceptance. Now she'd be watching those same people as potential criminals. What about Mrs. Thornfield? Won't she be suspicious if I act normal after what happened today? Rebecca's expression darkened. Mrs. Thornfield is about to have bigger problems than a confrontational parent. My people are already looking into her husband's charity work. She pulled up a file on her screen, and Maya caught a glimpse of financial records before Rebecca closed it. But you're right to think, strategically. Tomorrow you'll be apologetic, embarrassed about your mother's behavior, maybe even a little angry at me for embarrassing you. I can do angry, Maya said, then paused. This feels insane. Yesterday my biggest concern was whether I'd get into Columbia early admission. And now? Maya looked around their ordinary living room, trying to reconcile the familiar space with its new purpose as a federal safe house. Now I'm wondering if any of my classmates' parents are trafficking children. Her phone buzzed. Her regular phone, not the secure device. Maya glanced at the screen and froze. It's Sophia. Rebecca immediately went still, every instinct sharpening to focus on this first real test. Answer it. Act normal. Remember, you're upset about a difficult day, nothing more. Maya swiped to accept the call. Hey, Soph? Maya! Oh my God! I heard what happened with Mrs. Thornfield. Sophia's voice was breathless with the excitement of gossip. Jessica Martins was waiting outside the classroom and heard everything. Is it true your mom actually threatened her? Maya felt Rebecca's eyes on her, analyzing every word for potential intelligence value. Was Sophia calling out of genuine concern, or had someone asked her to probe for information? The paranoia felt ridiculous and necessary in equal measure. My mom was intense, Maya said, letting exhaustion creep into her voice. I'm mortified. Mrs. Thornfield was just doing her job, and Mom completely overreacted. Are you kidding? Mrs. Thornfield had it coming. The way she talks about scholarship students is disgusting. Sophia paused, and Maya heard voices in the background. My parents want to know if everything's okay. Dad said if your family needs anything. Rebecca's expression sharpened at the mention of Sophia's father. Maya remembered fragments of previous conversations, something about art galleries, connections to European collectors, family wealth that seemed disproportionate to legitimate business income. That's sweet, but we're fine, Maya said carefully. Just a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion. Well, if it helps, everyone's talking about how Mrs. Thornfield finally got called out for her racist bullshit. You're basically a hero. Maya caught Rebecca's slight nod of approval. Her first test as an informant, and she'd successfully deflected suspicion while gathering intelligence about the social fallout from today's confrontation. Thanks, Soph. I should go. Homework and damage control with my mom. After ending the call, Maya looked at Rebecca. How did I do? Better than most trained agents on their first day. Rebecca's smile was proud but grim. Welcome to the intelligence business, Maya. Your real education starts now. The weight of the secure phone in Maya's palm felt like holding a loaded weapon. She turned it over, studying its unmarked surface, while Rebecca continued typing with machine-like precision on her laptop. The familiar sounds of their neighborhood, distant traffic, and neighbors' television seemed to mock the surreal transformation happening in their living room. "I need you to understand something," Rebecca said without looking up from her screen. "Starting tomorrow, every person you interact with at Westfield is either a potential asset or a potential threat. There's no neutral ground anymore." Maya set the phone carefully on the coffee table between them. "You're talking about my friends. I'm talking about the children of people who might be trafficking other children." Rebecca's fingers paused over the keyboard. Sophia's father, Marcus Hartwell, runs 3 art galleries and has taken 17 international trips in the past 6 months. His declared income versus his lifestyle expenditures don't match. The casual way her mother delivered this information, like discussing weekend plans, made Maya's stomach twist. So Sophia is what? A suspect now? Sophia is a 16-year-old girl whose father might be laundering money through art sales to fund human trafficking. Rebecca's voice remained clinically detached, which makes her either an unknowing asset who could provide valuable intelligence or a trained operative who's been cultivating your friendship for 3 years. Maya's breath caught. Every shared lunch, every study session, every moment of genuine connection she'd felt with Sophia suddenly became suspect. The paranoia was immediate and devastating. If she couldn't trust her closest friend, who could she trust? "You don't know which one," Maya said. "That's what we're going to find out." Rebecca finally looked up, and Maya saw something that might have been sympathy in her eyes. "I know this is hard, but the traffickers we're hunting use their children as cover, as recruitment tools, as weapons when necessary. The Thornfield boy Alex attends your school. So does the Morrison girl, no relation to my handler, whose family runs the import business we've been watching." Maya felt the walls of her carefully constructed social world collapsing inward. Alex Thornfield was in her AP history class, a quiet kid who wrote thoughtful essays about social justice. Sarah Morrison had been her lab partner in chemistry last semester, earnest and kind, worried about getting into veterinary school. Now they were all suspects in a federal investigation. How do I sit next to them in class knowing what I know? The same way I've sat across from suspected killers at biker rallies for 3 years. Rebecca closed her laptop with a decisive snap. "You compartmentalize, you perform, and you remember that if we don't stop this network, more 13-year-old girls disappear forever." Maya pulled her knees to her chest, trying to make herself smaller in a world that suddenly felt enormous and threatening. "What if I'm not good enough at this? What if I make a mistake and blow your cover? When we run?" Rebecca's answer came without hesitation. "I've got 3 extraction routes memorized and cache hidden in 4 different locations. But Maya, you've been performing for acceptance at that school for 3 years. You know how to read social dynamics, how to ask questions without seeming obvious, how to make people want to confide in you. That was different. I was just trying to fit in. No, you were conducting social intelligence gathering without realizing it." Rebecca leaned forward, her intensity focused entirely on Maya. "Every time you figured out which girls to befriend for maximum social benefit, every time you navigated around the racist teachers or calculated which extracurriculars would look best on college applications, you were demonstrating exactly the skills that make a good operative." Maya had never thought about her high school survival tactics as preparation for federal investigation, but Rebecca was right. She'd spent 3 years studying her classmates like specimens, learning their weaknesses and motivations, understanding the complex web of relationships that governed Westfield's social ecosystem. The secure phone buzzed against the coffee table, making them both freeze. Rebecca grabbed it, her face tensing as she read the message. "What is it?" "James Thornfield was just spotted 3 blocks from here." Rebecca was already moving, checking the locks on their front door. 20 minutes ago, he has no legitimate reason to be in this neighborhood. The name sent ice through Maya's veins. Mrs. Thornfield's husband, the man who supposedly worked with children's charities. Maybe it's a coincidence? Even as she said it, Maya knew how desperate she sounded. Rebecca's expression confirmed her fears. There's no such thing as coincidence in this business. Rebecca moved to the front window, peering through the blinds with practiced surveillance skills. Which means our first test just arrived ahead of schedule. Maya hugged her knees tighter, understanding that tomorrow wouldn't be her debut as a federal informant after all. Tonight, sitting in their living room with a suspected trafficker circling their neighborhood, her new life had already begun. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, broken only by the distant hum of Rebecca's phone vibrating against the coffee table. Maya watched her mother's face cycle through expressions she'd never seen before. Calculation, assessment, decision-making that carried life-or-death weight. "Turn off all the lights except the kitchen," Rebecca whispered, her voice carrying an authority that made Maya move without question. "We need to look like we're winding down for the evening, not like we're aware of surveillance." Maya's hands shook as she clicked off the living room lamps, plunging them into shadows broken only by the yellow glow spilling from the kitchen doorway. The familiar space transformed into something alien and threatening. Every corner could hide a weapon. Every window became a potential entry point. "Is he watching us right now?" Maya's voice came out smaller than she intended. Probably. Rebecca had moved to a position where she could observe the street while remaining invisible to anyone outside. The question is whether this is reconnaissance or whether he's already figured out who we really are. The weight of that possibility crashed over Maya like a physical blow. If James Thornfield knew Rebecca was FBI, then her mother's 3-year investigation was blown. Worse, they were both targets now, sitting in a house that felt increasingly like a trap. "What would happen if he knows?" Maya asked, though part of her didn't want the answer. "Best case scenario, we get burned and lose the investigation. Those missing girls stay missing." Rebecca's tone was clinically detached, but Maya caught the tremor of rage underneath. "Worst case, we don't make it through the night." Maya's breath hitched. 24 hours ago, her biggest fear had been Mrs. Thornfield's racism damaging her college prospects. Now she was calculating the odds of surviving until dawn. Rebecca's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, and Maya watched her mother's face go pale. 2 more vehicles just entered the neighborhood. Different routes, but all heading this direction. That's not coincidence either, is it? No. Rebecca was already moving, pulling what looked like a gun from somewhere Maya hadn't seen her hide it. "Maya, I need you to listen very carefully. In 30 seconds, I'm going to send you upstairs to pack a bag. 1 bag, essentials only. We might need to run." The reality of their situation hit Maya like a physical blow. Her legs felt unsteady as she stood, every instinct screaming that this couldn't be real. She was supposed to be reviewing chemistry notes for tomorrow's quiz, not preparing to flee from human traffickers in the middle of the night. What about school tomorrow? What about my friends? Even as she asked, Maya realized how naive the questions sounded. "If we're lucky, you'll see them again someday." Rebecca's attention was split between her phone and the window, tracking threats Maya couldn't see. "If we're not, none of that matters anymore." Maya started toward the stairs, then stopped. "Mom, Rebecca, what if this is my fault? What if calling you to school today triggered something?" Rebecca's expression softened for just a moment, letting Maya glimpse the mother underneath the federal agent. "This isn't your fault, sweetheart. If anything, you've probably saved us both. If I'd kept going to school functions pretending to be someone I'm not, eventually someone would have recognized me from my prosecutor days. So what happens now? Now we find out if 3 years of deep cover work was worth anything." Rebecca checked her weapon with practiced efficiency. "And you learn what it really means to be a federal informant, because if we survive tonight, tomorrow you'll be walking back into Westfield Academy knowing that some of your classmates' parents tried to kill you." The secure phone lit up with an incoming call. Rebecca answered immediately, her voice sharp and professional. "Agent Chen." Maya could hear shouting through the speaker. Multiple voices, urgent commands, the controlled chaos of a federal operation spinning up to emergency speed. "How long until backup arrives?" Rebecca asked, then listened. "Understood. We'll hold position." She ended the call and looked at Maya. 20 minutes. Can you handle 20 minutes? Maya thought about every challenge she'd faced at Westfield. The social navigation, the academic pressure, the constant performance required to maintain her perfect student facade. None of it compared to this moment, standing in her darkened living room while suspected killers circled outside. But maybe that was the point. Maybe every careful calculation, every strategic friendship, every moment of holding her composure under pressure had been preparing her for exactly this test. "I can handle it," Maya said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Rebecca's smile was fierce and proud. "That's my girl. Now go pack that bag, stay away from windows, and remember, after tonight, you're not just Maya Chen anymore. You're someone who can survive anything." Maya headed upstairs, understanding that when she came back down, she'd either be fleeing into federal protection or walking into the most dangerous performance of her life. Maya reached the top of the stairs when the first gunshot shattered their front window. She dropped to the floor instinctively, heart hammering against her ribs as glass rained down into the living room below. Another shot punched through the kitchen window, and she heard Rebecca curse sharply in the darkness. "Maya," Rebecca's voice carried up the stairs with deadly urgency. "Stay down. Do not come back down here." But Maya was already crawling toward her bedroom, understanding with crystal clarity that everything had gone wrong. 20 minutes until backup, they'd never make it. The careful plans, the extraction routes, the secure phones, none of it mattered when bullets were flying through their windows. She grabbed her school backpack, dumping out textbooks with shaking hands. A few clothes, her laptop, the secure phone. What did you pack when your life was ending? Behind her, she could hear Rebecca shouting into her phone, coordinating with backup that might as well be on Mars for all the good it would do them now. Another gunshot, closer this time. Maya heard the front door splinter. "Federal agent, stand down!" Rebecca's voice, professional even in crisis. Then the sound Maya would never forget, the rapid burst of automatic gunfire that made her mother's shouted warnings disappear. Silence. Maya pressed her face against her bedroom floor, tears streaming as she realized she couldn't hear Rebecca anymore. The silence stretched impossibly long, filled with her own ragged breathing and the distant sound of car doors slamming, footsteps on broken glass, voices conferring in low tones she couldn't understand. Her secure phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Come downstairs, Maya. We have your mother." Her hands were shaking so violently she could barely hold the device. Every survival instinct Rebecca had tried to teach her screamed to run, out the back window, across the neighbor's yard, anywhere but down those stairs. But if they had Rebecca... Maya crept to her bedroom window and peered through the blinds. 3 black SUVs sat in her driveway like predatory animals. Men in tactical gear moved with professional efficiency, securing a perimeter around the house she'd lived in her entire life. This wasn't random violence or desperate criminals. This was a military operation, which meant Rebecca's cover hadn't just been blown. It had been systematically destroyed. Her regular phone buzzed now. A call from Sophia. Maya stared at the screen, remembering Rebecca's words about potential assets versus potential threats. How long had Sophia been reporting on her? How many of their conversations had been passed along to these men who just shattered her world? She let the call go to voicemail, but immediately another came through. Then another. Alex Thornfield, Sarah Morrison. Her entire social circle calling within minutes of the attack, as if they'd been waiting for some kind of signal. Maya understood with nauseating clarity that she'd never had friends at Westfield Academy. She'd had handlers. The secure phone buzzed again. 30 seconds, Maya. Then we come up. Maya closed her eyes, remembering every moment of the past 3 years through a new lens, every invitation to exclusive parties, every time someone had pumped her for information about her mother's work schedule, every casual question about Rebecca's background that Maya had deflected with practiced lies. They'd been watching her family for years. Tonight wasn't about Rebecca's investigation being discovered. It was about a trap that had been closing around them since the day Maya first walked into Westfield Academy. Heavy footsteps on the stairs now. Maya grabbed the secure phone and opened her bedroom window, looking down at what felt like an impossible distance to the ground. Behind her, the door exploded inward. "Hello, Maya." The voice belonged to James Thornfield, though he looked nothing like the mild-mannered charity worker she'd expected. The man standing in her doorway wore tactical gear and carried military-grade weapons like he'd been born to them. "Your mother is alive. But that can change very quickly." Maya turned slowly, the secure phone hidden behind her back. "What do you want?" 3 years of intelligence reports. Every conversation you had with Agent Chen about her assignment. Every detail she shared about the investigation. His smile was coldly professional. "We know she told you everything tonight. We heard the whole conversation." The house had been bugged, probably for months, maybe years. Every intimate moment with her mother, every family dinner, every private conversation, all of it recorded and analyzed by the very people Rebecca had been hunting. "I don't know what you're talking about," Maya said, but even she could hear how hollow it sounded. "Maya." James stepped into her room, and she could see other figures moving in the hallway behind him. "Your mother's life depends on your cooperation. The missing girls she's been investigating, they're very real, and if you don't tell us exactly what we want to know, you're going to join them." Maya looked at the secure phone in her hand, knowing it was useless now. Rebecca was gone, captured or worse. The investigation was blown. The missing girls would stay missing. All seemed lost.
Maya stared at James Thornfield's weapon-laden silhouette in her doorway, her mind racing through calculations that would have impressed her mother. The secure phone felt heavy in her hand behind her back, useless for calling backup, but maybe not useless entirely. "You want to know what my mother told me?" Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. "She told me you were stupid." James's professional smile faltered slightly. "Excuse me? 3 years of surveillance on a federal agent, and you never figured out the most basic thing about Rebecca Chen." Maya took a small step backward toward the window, her thumb finding the phone's recording function behind her back. "She's not just FBI, she's former prosecutor. Which means she knows exactly how people like you think. Maya, you're 16 years old and in way over your head." "Am I?" Maya felt something crystallizing inside her chest, sharp and bright as broken glass. "Because from where I'm standing, you just committed about 15 federal crimes to get intelligence my mother never actually gave me." The lie came easily, smoothly, with all the practiced deception she'd learned from 3 years of performing at Westfield Academy. But as the words left her mouth, Maya realized they weren't entirely lies at all. James stepped further into the room, and Maya caught sight of his expression in the streetlight filtering through her window. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "We heard the conversation, Maya. We know she briefed you on the entire investigation. You heard us talking about my school friends, about whether I could trust Sophia Morrison." Maya let her voice carry the perfect note of confused teenager, the same tone she'd used to deflect Mrs. Thornfield's suspicions just hours earlier. "That's what made you think she told me classified information?" She watched James's face carefully, reading the micro-expressions Rebecca had taught her to notice without realizing it. The slight tightening around his eyes, the way his grip shifted on his weapon. Doubt. "You're lying." "Am I? Or did you just blow a 3-year operation because you heard a federal agent having a normal conversation with her teenage daughter about high school drama?" Maya took another half-step back. "How's that going to sound in your debriefing?" Behind James, she could see the other figures in the hallway shifting restlessly. Maya realized with sudden clarity that this wasn't a smoothly coordinated operation. This was a desperate gamble by people who thought they'd been discovered. "Where is she?" Maya asked, letting genuine fear creep into her voice. "Where's my mother?" Downstairs. Alive. For now. James was studying her face intently. But that depends entirely on what you tell me in the next 60 seconds. Maya closed her eyes briefly, and in that darkness, she saw everything differently. Not a hopeless situation, but a chess game where she finally understood the board. Rebecca wasn't just FBI. She was a prosecutor who'd spent years learning how to manipulate testimony, how to create doubt, how to make criminals destroy themselves with their own assumptions. And Maya had been watching her do it for 16 years. James? Maya opened her eyes and smiled. Not the practiced Westfield Academy smile, but something sharper. Can I ask you something? How do you know my mother didn't want you to capture her tonight? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Maya watched understanding dawn slowly across James's face, followed immediately by the first real fear she'd seen from him. That's impossible. You've been monitoring conversations she knew you were monitoring. Maya's voice carried absolute conviction now, because she finally understood what Rebecca had really been teaching her tonight. Not just how to survive, but how to win. Did you really think a federal prosecutor turned undercover agent wouldn't sweep her own house for surveillance devices? The lie was so perfect, so elegant, that Maya almost believed it herself. But she could see it working on James, could watch him recalculating everything he thought he knew. Every conversation you heard was theater, Maya continued, taking another step back. Every detail about the investigation was carefully crafted disinformation designed to make you reveal yourselves exactly like this. You're 16. I'm the daughter of a woman who spent 3 years pretending to be someone else so convincingly that hardened criminals trusted her with their lives. Maya's voice carried steel now. Did you really think she couldn't teach me to do the same thing? James raised his weapon, but Maya could see the doubt eating at him. In the hallway behind him, she heard urgent whispers, fragments of conversation about backup timelines and exit strategies. They were scared. For the first time in this entire nightmare, the people who'd destroyed her world were genuinely afraid. Maya smiled wider and played her final card. The real question, James, is how long you think it's going to take for my mother's backup to arrive. Because if this was all a setup to catch you, she tilted her head with perfect teenage condescension. They're probably already here.
The silence that followed Maya's words stretched like a taut wire. She could see James processing the implications, his tactical training warring with the creeping realization that he might have walked into a trap. Behind him, the urgent whispers in the hallway grew louder, more frantic. Then Maya heard something that made her heart leap, the distant sound of sirens. James heard it too. His eyes widened, and Maya watched 3 years of careful planning crumble in his expression. "No," he whispered, then louder, "No, that's not possible." "Isn't it?" Maya pressed her advantage, even as part of her wondered if this was real or just incredibly lucky timing. "How long did you think the FBI would let a deep cover operation run without multiple layers of protection?" The sirens were getting closer now, and Maya could hear shouting from downstairs. Not the controlled communication of James's team, but something else. Something that sounded like Rebecca's voice cutting through the chaos. "Alpha Team, we have a problem!" One of James's men appeared in the doorway, breathing hard. Multiple federal vehicles approaching from 3 directions. "Someone called in our position." James spun toward his subordinate, weapon wavering away from Maya for just a moment. "That's impossible. We had full communication intercepts." "Unless the communications were designed to be intercepted," Maya said softly. The truth was, she had no idea if Rebecca had planned any of this. But Maya had spent 3 years perfecting the art of appearing confident when everything was falling apart. Every presentation at Westfield, every social interaction where she'd hidden her family's real circumstances, every moment of pretending to be someone she wasn't, it had all been training for this moment. James's phone crackled with urgent radio chatter. Maya caught fragments. Federal backup arriving. Extraction routes compromised. Abort immediately. "Mom!" Maya called out suddenly, her voice carrying through the house. "I'm okay. They didn't hurt me." Rebecca's response came back instantly, strong and alive. "Maya, stay exactly where you are." The sound of her mother's voice sent a surge of strength through Maya's body that she hadn't expected. Whatever was happening downstairs, Rebecca was not only alive but apparently in control. The careful doubt Maya had planted in James's mind suddenly felt less like a desperate lie and more like possible truth. "James," Maya said, her voice now carrying the kind of authority she'd learned from watching her mother in prosecutor mode. "You have about 30 seconds to decide whether you want to be captured as the leader of a human trafficking ring or as someone who cooperated with federal agents to bring down a larger conspiracy." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Maya tilted her head, studying his face with the same intensity she'd once reserved for chemistry equations. "Because from where I'm standing, you have two choices. Run now and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, or stay and find out if my mother really did orchestrate this entire evening." The sirens were close enough now that Maya could see red and blue lights flashing through her bedroom window. James looked toward the hallway, then back at Maya, his professional composure finally cracking completely. "This isn't over," he said, but even Maya could hear the defeat in his voice. "Actually," Maya replied, feeling something settle into place inside her chest, something sharp and unbreakable that hadn't been there before tonight. "I think it is." Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs, but these sounded different from James's team. Official, coordinated, professional in a way that spoke of actual law enforcement rather than criminals in tactical gear. "Federal agents." The voice was crisp, authoritative. "James Thornfield, you are under arrest." James's weapon dropped to his side as he realized his situation had become completely untenable. Maya watched him make the calculation she'd seen in countless teenagers at Westfield when they realized they'd been caught in a lie. The exact moment when fighting became pointless. "Maya Chen?" A woman in FBI gear appeared in the doorway behind the subdued James. "Agent Martinez, FBI. Are you injured?" "No," Maya said, then louder. "Is my mother okay?" "Agent Chen is secure and unharmed. She's requesting immediate visual confirmation of your safety." Maya's legs suddenly felt unsteady as adrenaline gave way to relief. She'd done it. Somehow, impossibly, she'd talked her way out of a situation that should have been fatal. More than that, she'd bought enough time for real help to arrive. "Can I see her now?" Maya asked, realizing that despite everything that had happened tonight, what she wanted most was just to hug her mother. Agent Martinez nodded. "Let's get you downstairs. Agent Chen is waiting." As they led James past her in handcuffs, Maya met his eyes one last time. She saw recognition there, the acknowledgement that he'd been outmaneuvered by someone he'd dismissed as just a teenager. Maya smiled at him with perfect Westfield Academy politeness. "Give my regards to your wife," she said sweetly. "I'm sure we'll have lots to discuss at the next parent-to-teacher conference." Maya followed Agent Martinez down the stairs, her legs still shaky from adrenaline but her mind crystal clear. The house she'd lived in her entire life looked like a war zone. Furniture overturned, glass scattered across the hardwood floors, bullet holes in walls that had once displayed her honor roll certificates. But none of that mattered, because Rebecca stood in the center of the chaos, alive and whole, directing a team of FBI agents with the same calm authority Maya had watched her use in federal courtrooms. Their eyes met across the destroyed living room, and Maya saw her mother's professional mask crack for just a moment. The relief in Rebecca's expression was so profound, it made Maya's chest tight. "Maya." Rebecca crossed the room in 3 quick strides, pulling her daughter into a fierce hug that smelled like gunpowder and fear and home all at once. "Are you hurt? Did they—" "I'm fine," Maya whispered against her mother's shoulder. "I'm okay. They didn't have time to hurt me." Rebecca pulled back, her hands framing Maya's face as she searched for any sign of injury. "What you did tonight, talking your way out of that situation, that was incredibly dangerous and incredibly brave. I learned from the best." Maya managed a shaky smile, though I'm pretty sure half of what I told them was complete nonsense. The best lies are always wrapped around truth, Rebecca said, and Maya could see pride mixing with concern in her expression. But Maya, this isn't over. Tonight was just the beginning. Agent Martinez approached them, tablet in hand. Agent Chen, we need to discuss immediate security protocols. The trafficking network is larger than we anticipated, and Maya's involvement tonight has made her a target. Maya felt the weight of that statement settle over her like a physical thing. She'd survived tonight, but in doing so, she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The careful balance her mother had maintained between Rebecca Chen, the FBI agent, and Rebecca Chen, the Westfield mom, had been shattered completely. How many more of them are there? Maya asked, looking around at the federal agents processing evidence in what used to be her living room. Rebecca and Agent Martinez exchanged a look that Maya had learned to read over the years, the same expression her mother wore when discussing cases she couldn't talk about, except now Maya was apparently part of the case. We've identified at least 12 key players in the trafficking operation, Agent Martinez said carefully. James Thornfield was middle management. His arrest tonight will trigger responses from the people above him. Responses like what? Like making sure you can't testify about what you witnessed tonight, Rebecca said quietly. Maya, I need you to understand. There's no going back to normal after this. These people don't leave loose ends. Maya looked around at the destruction, thinking about Mrs. Thornfield's smug superiority just hours earlier, about Sophia's too convenient friendship, about 3 years of unknowingly living under surveillance. Normal had been an illusion anyway. Good, she said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Because I don't want to go back. Rebecca studied her daughter's face with the same intensity Maya had seen her use on hostile witnesses. Maya, you don't understand what you're saying. If we move forward with this, if you agree to testify about tonight and help us build the case against the larger network, your life will never be private again. No more Westfield Academy, no more pretending to be a normal teenager. You'll be in federal protection until this is over, and that could take years. And the missing girls? Maya asked. What happens to them if I don't testify? The silence that followed was answer enough. Maya thought about the faces she'd seen in Rebecca's case files over the years, young women not much older than herself who'd simply vanished from their lives. She thought about Mrs. Thornfield's casual racism, about the way Westfield's elite families had used their daughter's friendship with her as cover for monitoring a federal investigation. She thought about the careful lies she'd told James Thornfield tonight, and how natural they'd felt after years of hiding who her family really was. I'm already in this, Maya said finally. I've been in this since the day you went undercover. I just didn't know it. Tonight, James Thornfield pointed a gun at me because of choices you made 3 years ago for your job. But you know what? I'm glad you made those choices. Because somewhere out there are girls who deserve better than being disappeared by people who think money makes them untouchable. Agent Martinez was taking notes now, but Maya kept her eyes on her mother's face. I want to finish what we started tonight, Maya continued. All of it. The trafficking ring, the corruption at Westfield, Mrs. Thornfield's whole superior attitude about family values while her husband trades in human lives. I want them all to face consequences for what they've done. Rebecca nodded slowly, and Maya could see the federal prosecutor emerging more fully than ever before. Then we'd better get to work, Rebecca said, because taking down an entire criminal network is going to make surviving tonight look easy. The war room that had once been Maya's dining room buzzed with controlled chaos. 3 portable screens displayed surveillance footage, financial records, and what Agent Martinez called the network map, a spider web of connections linking Westfield Academy families to offshore accounts and shipping manifests that made Maya's stomach turn. Here's what we know, Rebecca said, transforming completely into the federal prosecutor Maya had glimpsed only in fragments over the years. The trafficking operation uses Westfield Academy as both a recruitment ground and a money laundering front. Tuition payments from shell corporations, scholarship funds that don't exist, donation galas where the real business happens in private. Maya stared at the screen showing her school's familiar brick facade. How many students know? Most don't, Agent Martinez replied, pulling up a list of names Maya recognized with sinking dread. But some of the older students, particularly those whose families are directly involved, they've been groomed to help with recruitment, making friends with vulnerable girls, identifying runaways or students with family problems. The list showed Sophia Morrison's name highlighted in red. She wasn't my friend, Maya said quietly, pieces clicking together with awful clarity. She was assigned to watch me. For 3 years, Rebecca confirmed, every sleepover, every study session, every conversation where she asked about my work or our family, it was all intelligence gathering. Maya felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. Not heartbreak. She'd moved past that when James pointed a gun at her. This was colder, more focused. What do you need me to do? Agent Martinez leaned forward. Tomorrow is the Westfield Academy Donor Gala, the same event where Mrs. Thornfield will be expecting to celebrate her husband's success in neutralizing what they thought was a threat to their operation. Instead, she'll be wondering where her husband is. Exactly. Which creates an opportunity. Rebecca pulled up architectural plans of the Westfield Academy Gymnasium where the gala would be held. The network will be in crisis mode. They'll need to communicate, to coordinate their response to James's arrest. And they'll do it at the one place they consider completely secure, their own event surrounded by their own people. Maya studied the plans, remembering countless school assemblies in that same space. You want me to go to the gala? We want you to be yourself, Agent Martinez said carefully, the concerned student wondering where her English teacher's husband has gone. The perfectly innocent teenager asking exactly the right questions to make guilty people panic, while wearing a wire. While being our eyes and ears in a room full of criminals who think they're untouchable, Rebecca corrected. Maya, this is the hardest thing I've ever asked of anyone. You'll be surrounded by people who will kill you if they discover what you're really doing. But you're also the only person who can get close enough to gather the evidence we need to save dozens of girls. Maya looked at the photos scattered across the table, surveillance shots of men in expensive suits, financial records showing millions in illegal transactions, and worst of all, missing person reports for girls who looked exactly like the scholarship students she passed in Westfield's halls every day. What about backup? If something goes wrong? We'll have agents positioned throughout the building, Agent Martinez said. But Maya, you have to understand. If your cover gets blown, there may not be time for us to reach you. These people have killed to protect this operation before. The weight of that settled over the room like fog. Maya thought about the gun James had pointed at her just hours earlier, about how easily Mrs. Thornfield had shifted from racist condescension to cold calculation when she thought Maya might be a threat. There's something else, Rebecca said quietly. If we do this, if we go through with tomorrow night, I'll have to arrest Mrs. Thornfield myself, in front of the entire Westfield community. There won't be any going back to the way things were. Maya almost laughed. Mom, the way things were was me hiding who my family really was, while criminals used my classmates to spy on us. I don't want to go back to that. She stood up, looking around the room full of federal agents treating her house like a command center, at evidence of crimes that had been happening in her school while she worried about chemistry grades and college applications. Besides, Maya continued, feeling that sharp, cold certainty crystallize into something unbreakable, I just talked a trained killer into doubting everything he thought he knew about a federal investigation. I think I can handle a bunch of rich people in formal wear. Rebecca smiled, the same proud expression Maya had seen after perfect test scores and honor roll ceremonies, but different now. Deeper. This wasn't pride in academic achievement, this was recognition of something harder, more essential. Then let's teach them why they should have left us alone, Rebecca said. Maya nodded, already planning her outfit for tomorrow night. After all, she'd spent 3 years perfecting her Westfield Academy performance. Time to give them a show they'd never forget. The Westfield Academy Gymnasium had been transformed into something Maya barely recognized. Crystal chandeliers hung where basketball hoops usually stood, and silk draping concealed the familiar motivational posters. The Donor Gala was Westfield's crown jewel event, the annual gathering where Connecticut's elite celebrated their generosity while their children performed chamber music and gave speeches about gratitude. Maya had attended 4 of these galas. Tonight would be her last. She moved through the crowd in a midnight blue dress that cost more than most people's rent, every inch the perfect Westfield student. But beneath the elegant fabric, federal surveillance equipment recorded every conversation, every nervous glance, every moment of mounting panic as news of James Thornfield's arrest spread through whispered conversations behind champagne glasses. Maya, darling. Mrs. Patterson, mother of her former chemistry lab partner, swept over with the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. How wonderful to see you, though I'm surprised you came tonight, given all the uncertainty. Uncertainty. Maya tilted her head with practiced innocence, the same expression she'd used for 3 years when classmates made assumptions about her family's income. I'm not sure what you mean. Mrs. Patterson's smile flickered. Maya caught the way her eyes darted toward the gymnasium's side exit, where 2 men in expensive suits had been having increasingly agitated conversations all evening. The federal surveillance team had identified them as Marcus Webb and Thomas Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, both linked to shell corporations that funneled money through Westfield's donation system. Well, you know, dear, the unfortunate situation with Mr. Thornfield, such a shock for the whole Westfield family. Maya let her expression shift to concerned confusion, another mask she'd perfected over years of navigating Westfield's social dynamics. What situation? Mrs. Thornfield mentioned he might be late tonight, but, oh. Mrs. Patterson's champagne glass trembled slightly. You haven't heard. The wire Rebecca had insisted Maya wear captured every word as Mrs. Patterson explained James Thornfield's sudden illness that had required him to miss the gala. Maya nodded along, asking exactly the kinds of innocent questions that made guilty people reveal more than they intended. Where was he being treated? How serious was it? Had anyone spoken to Mrs. Thornfield about postponing her presentation about family values in education? Each question sent another ripple of anxiety through the crowd as Mrs. Patterson excused herself to check on the silent auction items. Maya moved deeper into the party, accepting compliments on her dress and sympathy about her difficult year with practiced grace. But she was hunting now, following the trail of nervous energy that led her toward increasingly dangerous conversations. Near the stage where she'd given honor roll speeches for 3 years, Maya found her real target. Mrs. Thornfield stood surrounded by Westfield's most prominent donors, but her usual commanding presence had cracks in it that Maya had never seen before. Her laugh was too bright, her smile too wide, and her eyes kept scanning the room like she was looking for threats among the familiar faces of Connecticut's elite. Maya, Mrs. Thornfield's voice carried across the small group. How lovely to see you here tonight. Though I'm surprised your mother could attend given her demanding schedule. Maya moved closer, every sensor Rebecca had hidden in her dress and jewelry recording the conversation. Oh, she's not here tonight. Work emergency. She paused, watching Mrs. Thornfield's reaction, something about arrests being made in a trafficking case she's been working on. The effect was electric. Maya felt the entire group's energy shift as Mrs. Thornfield's mask slipped for just a moment, long enough for Maya to see the cold calculation underneath. How fascinating, Mrs. Thornfield said carefully. I had no idea your mother dealt with such serious crimes. She doesn't talk about work much at home, Maya replied, letting her voice carry the perfect note of teenage indifference. But tonight she seemed really excited, something about finally getting the evidence she needed to arrest everyone involved in some network that's been operating for years. Maya watched Mrs. Thornfield's face cycle through emotions, surprise, fear, and then something much more dangerous, The racist superiority was gone completely now, replaced by the same cold assessment Maya had seen in James Thornfield's eyes just before he'd pointed a gun at her. "Excuse me," Mrs. Thornfield said to the group, her voice steady but her eyes never leaving Maya's face. "Maya, dear, could I speak with you privately? There's something about your academic standing we should discuss." Maya's blood turned to ice water, but she smiled with perfect Westfield politeness. Around them, the gala continued, chamber music and polite laughter and the gentle clink of crystal glasses. No one would notice one teacher leading one student away for a private conversation, just like no one had ever noticed the systematic recruitment and disappearance of vulnerable girls from their own student body. "Of course, Mrs. Thornfield," Maya said, following her English teacher toward the gymnasium's back corridor. "I always have time to discuss my education." But this time, Maya wasn't the helpless target Mrs. Thornfield thought she was. This time, Maya was the trap. Maya followed Mrs. Thornfield down the dimly lit corridor, each step carrying her further from the safety of the gala's crowded elegance. The surveillance equipment hidden in her jewelry felt impossibly small against the weight of what she was about to lose forever. "Your academic performance this semester has been concerning," Mrs. Thornfield said, her voice echoing off the empty hallway walls, but her tone had nothing to do with grades, and Maya could feel the predatory tension radiating from her English teacher like heat. "I'm sorry to hear that," Maya replied, maintaining the perfect Westfield politeness, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Through the wire, she knew Rebecca and the federal team were tracking every word, but the nearest backup was still 30 seconds away. In a situation like this, 30 seconds might as well be forever. Mrs. Thornfield stopped at the gymnasium's equipment room, the same space where Maya had hidden from bullies in 7th grade, back when her biggest problem was classmates who thought her mother's motorcycle made their family inferior. The irony wasn't lost on her. "You know," Mrs. Thornfield said, producing a key from her evening purse, "I've been teaching at Westfield for 15 years. I've seen so many bright students make foolish choices that destroy their futures." The door clicked open. Inside, the equipment room was dark except for the emergency exit light that cast everything in hellish red. Maya stepped inside, knowing that crossing this threshold meant giving up any pretense that she was still just a student caught up in adult problems. "Mrs. Thornfield," Maya said carefully, "if this is about my essay on social justice themes in literature, I can revise." "Stop!" The command was sharp enough to cut. Mrs. Thornfield closed the door behind them, and Maya heard the distinctive sound of an electronic lock engaging. "We both know this isn't about your schoolwork." Maya felt the last pieces of her old life crumble away. The Maya who worried about SAT scores and college applications, who'd spent 3 years hiding behind designer clothes and perfect grades. That girl was disappearing with each second that ticked by in this red-lit room. "Your mother thinks she's very clever," Mrs. Thornfield continued, circling Maya like a predator. 3 years of playing biker trash while building her federal case. But did she really think we wouldn't notice? Did she think we wouldn't prepare for the possibility of surveillance? Maya's blood turned to ice as Mrs. Thornfield pulled a small device from her purse, something that looked like a garage door opener but emitted a high-pitched whine that made Maya's ears ring. "Signal jamming," Mrs. Thornfield explained conversationally. "Your little wire is useless now. Whatever your federal friends were hoping to hear, they're getting nothing but static." The full weight of her situation crashed over Maya like a physical blow. She was alone in a locked room with a woman who'd just revealed herself as part of a human trafficking network, cut off from any communication with the people trying to protect her. But instead of the paralyzing fear she'd expected, Maya felt something else rising in her chest. Rage, pure, focused, and absolutely certain. "You want to know what my mother thinks?" Maya said, her voice steady despite the terror trying to claw its way up her throat. "She thinks you're all pathetic. Rich people so desperate to feel powerful that you trade in children's lives." Mrs. Thornfield backhanded her across the face with enough force to send Maya stumbling into a rack of volleyballs. The taste of blood filled her mouth, but Maya smiled anyway. "She also thinks you're sloppy," Maya continued, wiping blood from her split lip. "All that technology to jam my wire, but you never bothered to check if I was carrying anything else." Maya pulled her phone from her evening purse and showed Mrs. Thornfield the screen. A live video feed had been recording for the past 10 minutes, streaming directly to Rebecca's secure server. Every word of their conversation, every admission of guilt, every moment of Mrs. Thornfield's mask slipping away. "Backup recording," Maya explained, feeling fierce satisfaction at the way Mrs. Thornfield's face went pale, because apparently, growing up as the daughter of an FBI agent teaches you things they don't cover in honors English. The sound of splintering wood exploded through the room as federal agents kicked down the equipment room door. Emergency lights flooded the space as Rebecca burst in, gun drawn, with Agent Martinez and a full tactical team behind her. "Step away from my daughter," Rebecca commanded, and Maya heard 20 years of courtroom authority backed by 3 years of undercover rage. But as federal agents surrounded Mrs. Thornfield and the immediate danger passed, Maya felt the true cost of tonight settling over her like a shroud. There would be no returning to Westfield Academy, no pretending to be a normal student, no life that wasn't defined by federal protection and witness testimony. She'd sacrificed her anonymity, her childhood, and any hope of a normal future. But watching Mrs. Thornfield's hands get cuffed behind her back, Maya knew she'd choose the same sacrifice again. Some things were worth more than a normal life. The equipment room fell silent, except for the crackle of federal radio communications and Mrs. Thornfield's labored breathing as Agent Martinez read her rights. Maya stood frozen against the volleyball rack, watching her English teacher transform from predator to prisoner in the space of heartbeats. The woman who'd terrorized her with racist assumptions and academic intimidation now looked small and fragile in federal handcuffs. "Maya." Rebecca holstered her weapon and crossed the room in 3 quick strides, her hands gentle as they examined the cut on Maya's lip. "Are you hurt? Did she—" "I'm okay." Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion that made her legs shake. The wire got jammed, but the phone backup worked. Rebecca's smile was fierce with pride and relief. "You did perfectly. Every word is admissible evidence." Agent Martinez appeared beside them, his expression grim. "We need to move. Mrs. Thornfield's people at the gala are getting suspicious about the delay. If they realize what's happening, they'll run," Rebecca finished. She looked at Maya, and for a moment the federal agent mask slipped away entirely, revealing the mother underneath. "Maya, this is where you get to choose. We can pull you out right now, put you in protective custody while we round up the rest of the network, or I go back to the party," Maya said quietly. She understood the weight of the choice. Walking back into that gymnasium meant facing down people who would kill her without hesitation if they discovered her role in tonight's operation. But it also meant ending this, completely, finally, with no chance for the network to regroup and rebuild somewhere else. "They'll be panicked," Agent Martinez warned. "Dangerous. If even one person in that room figures out what you've done, they won't." Maya wiped the blood from her lip and straightened her dress, transforming herself back into the perfect Westfield student. But something fundamental had shifted. The girl who'd walked into this room had been playing a role, pretending to be brave. The one walking out had been tested by real danger and hadn't broken. They're so convinced of their own superiority, they can't imagine a 16-year-old Asian girl outmaneuvering them. Rebecca studied her daughter's face, seeing something there that made her nod slowly. 10 minutes. We move in 10 minutes, whether you're clear or not." Maya nodded and headed for the door, but Rebecca caught her arm. "Maya." Her mother's voice was soft, meant for her alone. "What you're doing tonight, it's going to save lives. Dozens of girls who would have disappeared into that network are going home to their families instead. Whatever happens next, Remember that." Maya squeezed her mother's hand and walked back toward the gymnasium, her heels clicking against polished floors that would never again echo with her footsteps. Behind her, she heard Mrs. Thornfield being led away in custody, the first domino in a network that had operated in plain sight for years. The gala was still in full swing when Maya returned, but the energy had shifted. Conversations were more urgent, laughter more forced. She could feel the growing panic like a living thing moving through the crowd of Connecticut's elite. Near the silent auction tables, Marcus Webb was having what appeared to be an animated phone conversation. By the champagne fountain, 3 women in designer gowns huddled together, their whispered conversation punctuated by nervous glances toward the exits. Maya moved through the crowd like a ghost haunting her former life, accepting concerned questions about her conversation with Mrs. Thornfield, while federal agents positioned themselves throughout the room. She answered with perfect innocence. Mrs. Thornfield had stepped outside to take an important call about her husband's condition. No, Maya didn't know when she'd be back. Each lie sent another ripple of fear through the network as they realized their carefully constructed world was collapsing. Maya watched Thomas Chen excuse himself from a conversation about endowment funding and head directly toward the emergency exit. 2 donors slipped away from the silent auction. The panic was becoming a stampede. Maya's phone buzzed once, Rebecca's signal that time was up. She was standing near the stage where she'd given honor roll speeches when Agent Martinez's voice echoed through the gymnasium speakers. "Federal agents. Nobody move." The elegant gala dissolved into chaos as federal agents poured through every entrance, but Maya felt only a strange, settling calm. Around her, men and women in formal wear were being handcuffed, their masks of respectability stripped away to reveal the criminals underneath. The life she'd built at Westfield Academy was ending, but something else was beginning. She thought about the missing girls whose photos had covered the Federal Task Force conference table, about classmates who'd disappeared and been written off as runaways, about a system so corrupt it had turned her school into a hunting ground. Maya Chen, honor student at Westfield Academy, was gone forever. But Maya Chen, the girl who'd helped bring down a human trafficking network, was just getting started. The return. 2 months later, Maya stood in the doorway of Lincoln Community High School, watching teenagers stream past her with none of the careful social choreography that had defined life at Westfield Academy. No designer uniforms, no whispered conversations about family pedigree, no invisible hierarchies that determined who belonged and who didn't. Just kids being kids, loud and messy and real in ways that Westfield had never allowed. "You sure about this?" Rebecca asked, adjusting the strap of Maya's worn messenger bag, a deliberate choice to replace the leather Hermes backpack that had been part of her Westfield costume. "There's still time to try the private academy in Hartford. They've guaranteed your safety." "I'm sure." Maya stepped across the threshold, feeling the weight of curious stares from students who recognized her face from news coverage, but didn't quite know what to make of the girl who'd brought down Connecticut's most prestigious school. "I'm done hiding behind other people's expectations." The past 2 months had been a blur of federal debriefings, witness testimony, and media attention that turned her story into headlines. Honor student exposes elite trafficking ring, daughter of undercover agent testifies against former teacher, Westfield Academy scandal reaches highest levels of state government. Maya had watched her former classmates scatter to other private schools, their parents desperate to distance themselves from the investigation that had revealed how deep the corruption ran. But Maya had chosen differently. When the federal prosecutors offered witness protection, she declined. When elite academies offered full scholarships to rebuild her academic reputation, she'd said no. Instead, she'd asked Rebecca for the one thing she'd never had, a normal life in a normal school where her last name didn't carry the weight of federal cases or motorcycle clubs. "Maya Chen?" A guidance counselor appeared at her elbow. Ms. Rodriguez, young enough to still remember being intimidated by high school herself. "I'm here to show you around, help you get oriented. I know this must be overwhelming after," she gestured vaguely, clearly uncertain how to reference the fact that Maya's previous school was now a federal crime scene. "After my old school turned out to be a front for human trafficking?" Maya supplied with a slight smile. She'd learned to address the elephant in the room directly rather than dancing around it. "Yeah, it's definitely different." Ms. Rodriguez blinked, then laughed despite herself. "Well, I can promise you that the worst thing you'll encounter here is cafeteria meatloaf and pop quizzes. Much less dramatic." As they walked through hallways lined with student artwork instead of donor plaques, Maya felt something loosen in her chest that had been tight for years. These weren't the polished corridors of Westfield, where every surface reflected wealth and exclusivity. Lincoln's walls were covered with college pennants from state schools, club meeting announcements, and photos from last year's spring musical, evidence of a community that celebrated achievement without requiring pedigree. "Your first period is AP Literature with Mr. Hassan," Miss Rodriguez explained, stopping outside a classroom where animated voices discussed character motivation in ways that would have been considered inappropriately passionate at Westfield. "He's excited to have you," said any student who can analyze criminal psychology in real time probably has interesting insights into fictional villains. Maya paused at the classroom door, watching students debate whether Iago was evil or simply opportunistic. At Westfield, such discussions had been carefully moderated, with students performing intellectual sophistication rather than expressing genuine curiosity. Here, a girl with purple hair was arguing passionately with a boy in a band t-shirt about the nature of corruption, their voices overlapping with excitement rather than competition. "Ms. Chen?" Mr. Hassan appeared beside her, a man in his 40s with kind eyes and sleeves rolled up to reveal ink-stained fingers. "Ready to jump into some literary analysis? We're discussing how authors reveal character through action rather than description. Seems like you might have some expertise in that area." Maya stepped into the classroom, feeling 20 pairs of eyes assess her with the frank curiosity of teenagers, rather than the calculating social measurement she'd known at Westfield. No one here cared about her mother's motorcycle or her family's net worth. They cared about the girl who'd helped FBI agents arrest 37 people, including 2 state senators and a federal judge. "So," said the purple-haired girl as Maya took an empty seat, "is it true you wore a wire to your own school's fundraiser?" "Among other things," Maya replied, surprising herself with how easily the honesty came. At Westfield, she'd spent 3 years carefully crafting responses that revealed nothing. Here, she found herself simply telling the truth. Turns out federal surveillance is excellent preparation for literary analysis. Both require paying attention to what people don't say. The class laughed, and Maya felt something she hadn't experienced since childhood, the simple pleasure of belonging somewhere without pretending to be someone else. When the bell rang and students scattered to their next classes, Maya remained in her seat for a moment, watching the controlled chaos of teenagers being themselves. She thought about the missing girls whose rescue had made this moment possible, about the network that would never again operate under cover of academic respectability. Maya Chen, Westfield Academy honor student, was indeed gone forever. But Maya Chen, survivor and truth-teller, was finally home. The new beginning. 3 months later, Maya sat in the passenger seat of Rebecca's motorcycle, watching the Connecticut countryside blur past in shades of autumn gold and crimson. The Harley's engine thrummed beneath them, no longer a cover for federal surveillance, just a mother and daughter taking the long way home from Maya's college interview at UConn. "How did it go?" Rebecca called over the wind as they slowed for a traffic light in a small town Maya didn't recognize. "Good, I think." Maya adjusted her helmet, still getting used to the weight of it. At 17, she was finally old enough to ride with her mother, something she'd dreamed about during those years when Rebecca's motorcycle had been just another prop in an elaborate federal charade. The interviewer asked about my unique perspective on justice and ethics. Apparently, helping expose a human trafficking network counts as extracurricular activity. Rebecca's laugh carried back to her, rich with the kind of joy that had been impossible during the undercover years. Your father would have been proud. He always said the best lawyers are the ones who understand that the law exists to protect people, not power. They rode in comfortable silence through towns that had once seemed foreign to Maya, places where people worked regular jobs and sent their kids to public schools and didn't measure worth in trust funds or family connections. During her Westfield years, she'd viewed such places from the back seat of luxury cars, looking down on what she'd been taught to see as ordinary. Now she saw them as real in ways that Westfield had never been. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sage, the purple-haired girl who'd become her closest friend at Lincoln High. Movie night at my place Friday? Dev's bringing his famous terrible popcorn. Maya smiled and typed back, wouldn't miss it. Fair warning, I might actually understand the plot twists now. Federal investigation experience has ruined my ability to be surprised by villains. The easy friendship still amazed her. At Westfield, relationships had been strategic alliances built on social utility. With Sage and Dev and the others at Lincoln, Maya had discovered something she'd never expected. People who liked her not for her perfect grades or designer clothes or family connections, but for her terrible jokes and fierce loyalty and the way she listened when they talked about their dreams. "There's something I need to tell you," Rebecca said as they pulled into the driveway of their new house, a modest colonial in a neighborhood where federal agents didn't need to maintain covers as motorcycle-riding criminals. Agent Martinez called this morning. They found another network, smaller than Westfield, but operating out of a private academy in Massachusetts. Maya felt the familiar twist of anxiety in her stomach, followed immediately by something else, a strange, steady certainty. "They want me to testify again?" "No." Rebecca cut the engine and turned to face her daughter. "They want to know if you'd be interested in consulting. There are other kids trapped in situations like yours was. Smart, observant teenagers who see things adults miss but don't know how to report what they're seeing safely." Maya pulled off her helmet, considering. The idea of voluntarily walking back into that world, of risking the normal life she'd fought so hard to build, should have terrified her. Instead, she found herself thinking about the missing girls whose photos had covered the Federal Task Force conference table, about kids who might be sitting in elite classrooms right now, watching their teachers and wondering why certain students disappeared without explanation. "I'd need to finish high school," Maya said finally. "Graduate with my class at Lincoln, have a real senior year, prom, all of it. Of course. And I'd want to study criminology in college, maybe law school after that. If I'm going to do this, I want to do it right." Rebecca's smile held 20 years of pride and 3 years of regret for the childhood Maya had sacrificed. "Your father would definitely be proud. Though he might have pointed out that most people choose their career path through less dramatic circumstances." Maya laughed, thinking about the girl she'd been at Westfield, desperate to blend in, to be perfect, to hide every part of herself that didn't fit the acceptable mold. That girl had been so afraid of being different that she'd nearly missed the chance to make a difference. "Mom," Maya said as they walked toward the house where she'd learned to be herself instead of performing respectability, "do you think we saved them, all those girls?" Rebecca paused at the front door, keys in hand, and Maya saw the weight of 3 years of undercover work and 20 years of seeking justice in her mother's expression. "I think," Rebecca said carefully, "that we saved the ones we could save. And because of what you did, because you were brave enough to tell the truth when it mattered most, there will be more chances to save others." Maya nodded, understanding that some victories were incomplete, that justice was ongoing work rather than a single moment of triumph. But as she looked at their house, ordinary, real, theirs, she felt something she'd never experienced at Westfield Academy: peace.